of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank in extensia the volunteer that I recruited to carry out the U.S. flag policy. She certainly has had her hands full this last 2.5 or 3 months. She's Johnny on the spot. She was here this morning. I haven't seen the news, so I'm not sure, but she must be tuned in to some site that tells her when to go up and down. As we discussed last 2 weeks at the regular meeting, it's the board's wish to have privilege of the floor at the beginning and the end of all meetings, so we will start with privilege of the floor. Privilege of the floor, as I stated at the general meeting, is to address town business that is before the town of Enfield. So you want to get the sign-in sheet and see if anybody wishes to speak. Marguerite, you signed
I
the
did.
privilege of the floor.
You want me to stand up?
Yeah.
Sure.
And identify yourself.
All right, Marguerite Wells, 863 Hates Road. I sent an email around, but I didn't expect that necessarily all of you would have time to see it before tonight's meeting. But my thought was this regarding the conversation we've been having about decommissioning bonds. In order to address the concern that bonds are not always the best instrument in the long term, I wanted to reiterate the thought that we had that it's really only something we would buy in the first year, of sort of from now-ish until the turbines were up, because it's a quick instrument to buy. You buy it and 3 days later you have it. And it's an easy thing financially, but in the long term it's not something we like because they're expensive. And so in the long term we would foresee using either a letter of credit or an actual cash escrow account as the collateral instead, which I think is preferable from the town's point of view too. So I was positing, what if we put together an agreement that said we're only going to do a bond for its short-term nature before there's ever turbines up, and once turbines are up, then we'll put a cash collateralized instrument in place to better satisfy the town's need to actually be able to access that money should we want it, because I think that's the problem with bonds, is they're a little harder to get at. And then on the other point of discussing how much money is enough for decommissioning these things, I proposed, how about we just use 180,000, because the town law had said 125, and we were not sure if that was adequate really, but if we just up it substantially and say 180, let's say, would that be enough for this 1-year bond to cover the turbines that won't even be up yet? To just be able to, so that we can put this thing to rest for now, just so we can keep on all the rest of the stuff that we have before us, because I feel like we have a lot of different wind farm related stuff that needs to get done, and I think we'd probably all like to put a few things to bed and go on to the next. So that was all my suggestion was, and I'd leave it up to conversation for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does anybody else wish to address the board during privilege of the floor? If not, we'll move into the main body of the working meeting tonight. We will continue the subject matter that was started during privilege of the floor, and that of bonding. And the board has had numerous questions during the past 2 or 3 months regarding bonding and other forms of security and financial terms. And so I contacted Michael Cannon, who's Vice President of Commercial Banking at the Trust Company. And he very graciously said that he would give us a tutorial in bonds, other forms of security, or revocable letters of credit and undertakings. And I have indicated to him that probably the board would be wanting to ask questions of him. So without ado, Mr. Cannon, tell us about these strange things.
I'm certainly not an expert at this. What I liken this to, though, is a gravel bank or a quarry. I often have letters of credit, irrevocable letters of credit out to benefit the New York State DEC for the reclamation of a gravel pit. So the operator has to maintain a letter. They have other options. They can go to insurance companies and get bonds for these. The purpose is that if the pit should be abandoned or the company go out of business, the reclamation, the letter will be called and the reclamation process will be undertaken by the DEC. As a person who writes the letter of credit, if it's called, I don't get in the middle of an argument. I send them the money. My customer now has an obligation to pay me back. We often get cash security for these. Insurance companies do the same thing. They get cash security. I assume that a wind farm is very similar to this. And so I did a little bit of online research. And, when you search New York State decommission, the Black Oak Wind Farm is the first thing that returns. With their decommissioning write-up. This seems pretty solid to me. You got to get somewhere near the number that it takes to take down a turbine and dispose of it. And you can insure around it. You can do an irrevocable letter of credit. You can take cash collateral and hold it. These are all options that should be presented to the legal entity. I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. This is a very common thing. It's used for many purposes. It's not exotic in any way. And that's about all I've got to say. I'll take questions.
The letter of credit would be issued by a bank like yours, and then it's the bank's responsibility to make sure that it's backed by something. Is that right? Or?
Well, internally, I need to know it's backed by something, but you're backed by the bank. So you don't need the creditworthiness of that person anymore. Now your concern is the creditworthiness of the bank. So oftentimes, bonds that are offered, take Longview for instance, that's called a credit enhanced bond. Longview had M&T Bank issue a letter of credit to back their bond. So.
As banks are bought and sold, does that letter of credit carry to the buyer of the bank?
Yeah, the letter of credit survives that, yeah.
So I'm hearing letter of credit and bonding being used kind of at the same time, almost as if they're the same thing. Is that?
A very similar thing. An insurance company would probably issue a bond
Right.
to cover the same purpose. An irrevocable letter of credit is something I use for multiple purposes. Someone's shipping something to China,
Right.
they're expecting to get it.
I definitely have heard them in different contexts, used in different ways, and I never really thought they were the same thing in that sense because.
You have to be careful. Letters of credit run this entire gamut of documentary letters of credit. So if something hits the port, the bank will process paperwork and then turn over the payment. That's a type of letter of credit.
Right.
But an irrevocable letter of credit, I think in the situation I mentioned with the gravel bank, I think is very akin to what you're doing here.
Right. So a couple of the things that our lawyer brought up with the bonding, and I assume that the bonding was from an insurance company perhaps. The first issue was that in his understanding that if a bond were to be called in because the person who bought the bond did not follow through with their obligations, that the first thing that the issuer of the bond would do would be to sue the person who bought the bond rather than pay the person who the bond would be going to. They actually would sue the person who bought the bond originally to come up with the money to pay the person that they bought the bond for, rather than actually pay the bond. That was his understanding of how that typically worked. Does that seem true, or?
the way my letters of credit work, which I'm more familiar with, is that I have 1-year renewable letters of credit. The New York State DEC tells me that if I want to cancel my letter with them, I need to give them 90 days notice. When I give them 90 days notice, they turn around and they tell me, pay us now. And I got to deal with my customer.
Right.
So it's not my choice to renew it. I'm immediately on the hook.
Right,
They can call their letter in that 90-day window.
right,
I think a bond works the same way. Again, what's backing your bond is the insurance company, not the individual. If they go bankrupt, you're going to get paid by the insurance company.
right. What he was saying, though, is that if it's not a bankruptcy situation, but rather just an unwillingness to pay, then the insurance company will actually go after the person who purchased the bond before paying off the person who they're obligated to.
No. No, your relationship with the bond is their creditworthiness. I'm going to go after that person after I've paid you.
Right,
On a letter of credit, I got to pay you. The language in my letters of credit say, I will deliver you the money by the next business day.
so we would want to look for a bond that has that same language in it.
You're going to want that language in it,
Yeah.
and you don't, the people issuing the bond, the people issuing the letter of credit, don't get in the middle of, wait, you said you did it.
Right, right.
They said you didn't do it. It's not a question of that.
Right. So the other issue that he had, the other question was that there are certain circumstances where the issuer of the bond actually would be unwilling to pay for certain aspects of what things that might happen in the decommissioning process. And one of them would be if there were environmental catastrophes, emergencies, whatever, that would happen, that they actually usually put in their bond proposal that they don't cover those kind of things. Let's say a wind generator was coming down and there was 400 gallons of fluid in it that actually fell and spilled into the ground. They then wouldn't cover the cleanup of that fluid that's fell into the ground. They could just cover the actual taking away the turbine itself.
Well, they peg an amount on the turbine, so if you get a letter of credit for $250,000 and that doesn't get the job done, yeah, you're in trouble. You're going to need to cover the difference, or I would say it'd be more practical to insure on the difference. Some sort of environmental insurance policy that kicks in when it's costs above and beyond what you're.
Right.
Because that would be on the contractor generally.
Again, my relationship is going to be covered to an amount. I'm going to give them the check, and I'm gone. I don't dicker about what gets cleaned up, what doesn't, what I'm paying for. I give you the money, and I go after them.
Right.
So you would give like the full amount of whatever that bond or letter of credit is. And I guess the second part of that is what triggers that? What's preventing like the town or any entity from calling a letter of credit, even though it's unfounded that you call that letter of credit?
It's usually a fairly innocuous sentence that says they didn't perform. If you're going to get in a lawsuit, it's going to be between you two. It's not going to be
Right.
between me.
So like the town or whatever entity is DEC can call that letter at any time during that.
With your agreement with them, if you pull the turbine down and only spend $100,000, I think your agreement with them is that you'll reimburse them for the difference. I mean, expect them to cover that in their end of the bargain.
In this instance, our main concern is like, say they go out of business and there's turbine saying they're going to need to come down, and there's no one to bring them down, and they come to bring them down.
I can't hear you. What's that?
Oh, I think the concern, like with decommissioning, is making sure that if the developer doesn't exist anymore as an entity and isn't able to pay that, then we still need to bring the turbines down. Yeah.
You call me, I bring you a check. So they, if you want a third party to be able to take those down, because you're probably going to end up in that situation. If they're out of business, you're going to need a third party to come in and get that done.
So if we or any entity calls a letter of credit and say, well, wait a minute, you shouldn't be calling a letter of credit, then the developer could sue us saying, you called that letter of credit, you shouldn't have, because there's no reason to do that. And you're out of it. As long as you get that call, that's it, that's all you care about.
I'm giving you the money, I'm not waiting for them to call me as well. And bond would work the same way.
And there's no like, well, the turbine only cost $150 to come down, and there's $30,000 and
So in my case, I actually saw the gravel bank example. I saw a gravel bank redone by one of my customers recently. And he has a lot of earth-moving equipment. He did it for a fraction of what the bond amount they were holding. And he said it wasn't a big deal. If he didn't perform, and they hired a third party, I'm sure it would have been 3 times as much to do this. But they had enough to cover it. So.
in Mike's scenario that he mentioned, that we're sort of like guessing, half guessing at this magic number, and we don't really know for sure exactly how much it's going to cost till it actually happens. We try to get the best information, try to read our research as best as possible, but you mentioned that if like 400 gallons of oil spill on the ground and that has to be remediated, then would we, in that scenario, should we be taking out like an additional policy that was mentioned
People often get environmental insurance.
In the case that number's not correct?
Yeah, people often on gas stations get additional environmental insurance
Okay.
for that type of thing. You can insure almost anything. So
That's true.
if it's above and beyond the amount that you're using with your bond or your letter of credit, I'm sure you can get insurance for that. For a catastrophic claim.
The way that I would see that working is the town would hire some contracting firm to take these things down, and that contractor is the one who carries that insurance. And so when you have a fixed price contract that says these dollars are going to take these turbines down, and you don't actually care what that contractor is getting as scrap fee, for example, on the backside, because that's not your concern. Your concern is that the dollars you provide them covers everything, and in that would also cover the insurance of their own work, because their work would be the spill. In the same way that when we build the project, spills can happen, and our contractors always have to cover that under their fault, because that would be their responsibility.
It could be that there's some incident that's not the contractor's fault, some environmental incident that happens.
Before the contractor arrives.
Before the contractor arrives, and then we have to deal with bringing the turbine down and a spill. So it could be, so it may not always be the contractor's responsibility.
So it sounds like we want to look very closely at the language of the bond when we get it.
Now, the DEC adjusts the values on these things. They go out and annually or every few years I'll get a note saying 44,000 doesn't do it anymore, we need 66,000. Or if they've expanded their mining permit, I get a notice to increase the amount. If someone isn't strong credit-wise, I take cash collateral. So I'm completely covered. I've got cash in my vault to cover my letter of credit.
So are you saying that there is a standard level of pricing for certain situations that the DEC has available?
The DEC, these are just gravel banks, of course.
Right.
They have a formula for calculating what that price is, and they adjust it annually for inflation.
But that's the same thing we can do.
Yeah.
We can review this periodically. It doesn't even say that it has to be a year apart.
Yes.
We can review it and demand a higher securitization for decommissioning.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the DEC perhaps has done some research into the issue of
Oh, that would
decommissioning.
help us out on
Right.
pricing.
Yeah, so we don't
I actually called them today. They sent me to NYSERDA, so.
So NYSERDA, right, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and NYSERDA does good stuff, but I don't always trust their level of expertise. They're in the business, so to speak.
I think you could insure around this. You could require a policy for an above and beyond amount. It probably wouldn't be.
Which is what
Prohibitive.
Marguerite was suggesting. Yeah.
think the cost of insurance to the developer is not so great in order to make sure that the town is fully covered and then some with a buffer. You see what I mean? Like, I'd rather take on a little extra insurance policy cost and make sure that you guys are comfortable with the coverage you've got than to sit here and quibble all year about a $50,000 difference one way or another, which premium-wise will work out to be $10 a year or something.
Right.
You know?
Don't speak so cavalierly. Have you looked into this?
Yeah, I've looked a lot into pricing of bonding, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it won't
I
be
mean,
10, it won't be $10, Marguerite,
It
right?
won't be $10, but my point is that there is a way to build in a buffer that makes
Right.
you guys comfortable that is not unduly onerous on us.
That makes sense.
I think the $10 is a figurative statement.
It's figurative, not literal, absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
Anything else?
No, that's really interesting. Thanks so much.
I don't know if I'd call it interesting, but thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Michael. You got it?
You can think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about those kinds of instruments, so it's interesting to see how it works, based on the bank's perspective.
Patty?
I also chose the trust company because I doubt they're going to get any business out of this, so they're pretty neutral. They get our business, but I'm not sure they're going to get the wind farms business.
Well, while we're on this subject, can we talk about Marguerite's suggestion?
Sure, I need a different pile of papers here. Right here. It'd be under decommissioning. The conversation from 2 weeks ago was establishing an amount per tower. Is my memory correct?
That was certainly part of it.
Yes.
Is that where you want to start, or you want to start someplace
That's a good
else?
place to start. Yeah. What do you think, Michael, about the 180 number?
I based that on like the information that I found out. There was one person that did a pretty detailed analysis and went and tried to estimate. Well, you need so many backhoes, you need a contractor to manage this, and then you have this and you have that, and it seemed like a very similar kind of project because he was talking about excavating to removing the foundation, and he got down to like the pins, the bolts that are in the concrete, and the difficulty you have extracting that and recycling and that, and then trying to get down to like 3-foot depth. So I thought it was fairly simple. I didn't verify all the numbers he had for contractors and other things, but it seemed pretty reasonable from the discussion standpoint.
The 125?
The 180.
180.
Yeah.
That's what you said was.
That's what I sort of calculated based on the information that they had provided for another turbine.
Right.
And I just kind of, estimated and add a little padding to that, a little bit of padding there. Too much, because it looked like that was estimated back in 2011 or 12. So I moved it forward like 5 or 6 years, added 3% per year, and then that may be too specific of it, and not too specific, but it's based on the information that I was reading on that document.
Right.
Because most of the other information I found wasn't that detailed in terms of talking about all these other costs, because other things we're talking about just scrap metal in general. Well, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to decommission things, and the blade pieces need to go somewhere, whether they get recycled or hauled away. You have trucking costs involved, and then it depends on how close you are to recyclers and what the price of recycling metals and other materials are. So,
On the other hand, what we are doing is establishing an amount
yes.
prior to construction. And I would think prior to anywhere near the decommissioning process. So that this 180 is not embedded in stone, but is a place to start.
Yeah, I would say that. If people are concerned about it being too low, then, you know, adding to that if you need to. I mean,
Well,
if it-
you would have to have some actual facts, it seems like, to support raising
Yeah, yeah. Here is,
an amount.
it was a paper or article that on Canoe's analysis of cost of decommissioning. Canoe's.
He does the methodology.
Yeah, public commentary, and it was going into detail, and on the back, they had an itemized list of and I thought, well, that's pretty cool, because he's talking
Yeah.
about
He-
hiring project manager, site engineers, removal of tower, you know, bringing in cranes and having also, you know, other equipment and trucking things out, so, and I just kind of took that number and moved it forward. They had a 170 estimate, but I think that was, I forget what that,
Canoes was 2011.
oh, I think that was the cost of decommissioning the turbine. And then factor in that you're gonna get some scrap metal value out of it. And he went down below and said, well, looked at the 10-year average, the 10-year low, and the 10-year high. So I took basically a 10-year low for scrap metal value
Right.
and deducted that from the number and then moved that forward. So that's kind of that was kind of the methodology I used to determine.
You kind of based you used that methodology.
Yes, I used that methodology, assuming that, you know, this information is fairly good. So I took the bottom line, you know, deducted the 10-year low for scrap metal value and moved it ahead 3% per year. I think I factored up like to the nearest 5.
And the number you came up with
Was I think around 180, 175, 180, depending on how you round up.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's great. There is one issue in this kind of situation, just to be aware of, not that we have to think about it right now, but if you get to a position where you have to do something, let's say you have a 6-month window or something, and you have to do a job that's not at all a usual job and not a lot of people do, when you try and get proposals from people to do that, and they know what your time level is, and they know that the limited labor pool, talent pool to choose a proposal from, often people will keep their prices significantly higher than they think that they actually need in order to see as much, make as much profit as they can in the situation. So at some point in the future, we might want to keep that in mind if we continue to do adders based on future costs and things like that.
That's a good point, because I mean, in any business, if you don't have experience with something, it might take you a little bit longer to do something.
And, you know, it's just if there's a shortage of people to do something, then prices go up. They don't go up in a reasonable manner. They go up often in a manner that, well, what's the most I can possibly get? And let's just put that in there and see if we get it. If we don't get it, I'll stay home, whatever.
Yeah.
And people do that. So it seems like that's a reasonable number to start with for now.
Yeah. And it might be a good base, a good baseline to start with, and then if we're not sure about something, then we could probably
Right.
add another, factor into that, unsure factor. About
Well,
about it.
if we did do the bond for the start of the process, and the process goes through, and they wind up putting them up and getting them up in a year from now or whatever it might be, and are ready to switch from the bond to something else, I assume that we can revisit the cost at that point.
Well, we can revisit the cost period.
Right.
Mike was talking about your bonding for term.
Well, if we have that in the agreements that we make, definitely.
basically the bond you mentioned was to cover the cost from the start till the project completion.
Right.
And so, you know,
I mean, it's in the law that you can change the number at any time. Anyway,
At any
but if
time.
you want to put it in the agreement to make it extra explicit, sure.
Oh, in the permitting agreement?
No, what I had suggested in this email was that we put together a short, I couldn't take more than 2 pages, but a little agreement between the project and the town saying, here's what we're doing with this bond letter of credit thing. We're gonna do a bond for a year, when the turbines go up, we're gonna swap it out for a different instrument that you guys prefer. And at that time, we can revisit the amount. And we'll just say it right there,
Up front.
right up front.
So, Marguerite, you would be writing a paper that you would present to the board that would include all this information? And-
Yes. I mean, I would think of it as a pretty straightforward thing. I would not try to do a guide for 24 pages, but much as I love Guy, I just sort of think it's relatively straightforward, few points that we want to cover, things we want to do.
Well, we don't need to take any action on that, do we, Ann? Other than just to say we would entertain a proposal by
Yeah.
Black Book to
Right.
present that
Yeah,
to the
this
board.
will be an action item.
But today
I-
it's not, right?
No.
nothing.
Right, because I don't have anything formal to do, I just wanted to
Right.
talk,
Right.
float it to you.
Right.
I'll get it to you email in the next week or so.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
if we're unsure about the number, then we can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Well, if between now and 2 weeks, you've got new information that indicates 180,000 isn't anywhere in the ballpark, but short of that, I'm not sure why there's not a reason to start with a number.
Sounds good.
Okay, so,
Also, I think last time we also talked about repairing the road after decommissioning too.
yes, and I went back through, and it's your turn. It's in the road agreement,
Okay.
and it's your turn to show me where it isn't in the road agreement, or why that road agreement doesn't kick in again at decommissioning. You show me why it doesn't kick in.
Not saying that it doesn't exist, I'm just wondering, about in terms of the financial bonding of such things. in terms of decommissioning.
But isn't the road use agreement about bonding too? I mean, don't you think it's about bonding?
Is there a
Is there a
bond
bond for the?
in the road use agreement that lasts the whole life of the project?
Show me.
That's what I'm saying.
Well,
show
it's
me.
more of a question.
Yeah, I don't,
I don't know.
I can't imagine that the road use agreement would have a bond that would last 25, 30, 40 years for the life of the project just to stay in place until the project was done and the roads were going to be fixed after decommissioning.
So your concern is,
Well, if you want to have bonding that would also cover fixing the roads after decommissioning, then you would have to figure out a number that would cover the cost of fixing the roads after decommissioning.
and you don't
Have
think
that-
it's in the road use agreement?
Well, I really don't think it's in the bonding part of the road use agreement. I think it says that it'll do it, but you have to have money that will assure that it gets done, that's all. And that money has to be available 25 years from now rather than when the road use agreement is done and finished and there's nothing there. You understand the difference? The money has to last till decommissioning happens. And if they were to
There's
do
two
that.
parts to the road problem.
Okay,
There's the construction part,
right,
and there's the decommissioning part.
right,
One would assume they happen several years apart.
right.
And so your concern is that the whole thing doesn't kick in at the decommissioning.
Say that again.
Your concern is that after it's built, then it's gonna die, and there's nothing that's gonna recharge it.
The road
when-
use agreement may be continual to the end of the project. It may be defined as saying, we will fix the roads now, and we will fix the roads at the end of the project. That's great. The agreement would say that, okay? The same thing with the decommissioning. The decommissioning says, we will take these down when it's all done. We're taking their word for it. They don't expect to be getting this money from the bond. They don't expect to be using this line of credit. They don't expect to be doing any of that stuff. They expect when it's time to decommission these projects, they're gonna take out their wallet, pay for the guy to decommission, take them down, be done, and it's all over, and that's it. The only reason why we have this bond or this irrevocable letter of credit is if they do not do that
Right.
when it's all done.
Right.
So, at the same time, we would want to have this bond or this irrevocable letter of credit that would cover the repair of the roads after the decommissioning of the wind generators is done. So we need to include enough money in this bond or irrevocable letter of credit that would cover not only the removal of the turbines, but also the repair of the roads after the turbines have been removed and the big equipment's been come and gone. So you might want to add a little bit of money to the bond or the letter of credit beyond the 180,000 for the 7 turbines each to cover the cost of repairing the road, because I don't think that will be in the road use agreement. I don't think that saved money will be in the road use agreement. I don't think they want to spend 25 years of bonding for that.
I agree, I know what you're getting at, Mike. Would it be a helpful metric for a later meeting, maybe I send it around in my email in a week or so, to figure out how many truck trips would be likely in a decommissioning effort, so that we can look at what kind of damage that would be? Because if it were, say, 50 tractor trailers and no overweight vehicles, for example, would that be even amount of traffic that would require bonding in the first place? Because that road already sees that amount of traffic in 2 days.
I think it's just a matter of somebody defining what kind of wear and tear
That's
the
what I'm getting
decommissioning
at.
process will
Would it be
have on the
helpful
road.
if I dug into that
And
a
then
little bit?
deciding if there's significant costs involved with that. So-
According to this, you'll be calling in cranes and earth moving equipment besides
Right.
the trucks, and so it's probably very similar to the setup.
Well, no,
it may be
because
similar. Well,
about 3/4 in the setup, 3/4 of the truck trips are not the heavy, they're not the cranes or the turbines, they're the gravel and the concrete, 95% of which never comes back out again. And so most of the truck trips that went in do not come back out in the taking down process. So if I may, I'll dig a little into those numbers and find some, make a metric to 7 turbines and share that with you.
It also is my understanding from conversations with Buddy that we don't have the best of roads in Enfield, and that kind of heavy traffic will probably destroy some of the underlying infrastructure over that road. So maybe
Well, you first have to decide how heavy the trips are gonna be before you can,
yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming there's going to
Well-
be heavy trucks on both putting them up and taking them down. And I don't know how many trips and how much damage that would cause to the road at the beginning versus the end. I just know there's going to be a lot of heavy trucks.
Well, and it would depend in
along the
part
way.
on what you're decommissioning. If you are, let's say it's 10 years from today, and we've vanished and you're taking these things down, you wouldn't sell them as scrap. You would sell them as used turbines because they're much more valuable that way. And so you'd be taking them out whole. Well, I'm saying you would. If it's 30 years from now and we've vanished and you're taking them down, then they are scrap. And then you're cutting them into pieces and taking them out on tractor
you're not
trailers.
taking it.
So they're different efforts that require different amounts of trucks.
Yeah, so the
Right.
timing would, depending on whether there's value enough in the turbines to
Right, so
sell
I can kind of
trucks or so.
outline 2 of those options for you.
But even like the concrete trucks are bringing concrete in, well, the concrete's still there. It may not have the moisture content that they came in with, but the concrete is still there.
It's not all coming out.
It's not coming out.
Down to 3
It's
feet.
not
Some
all.
of it-
Tiny
some
portion
Some of it's coming out.
Some of it's coming out.
3 feet of a fairly significant, base.
It's only the stem of the mushroom cap, if you will,
Okay.
that comes out. The 90% of the turbine stays in place, or the foundation stays in place.
Okay.
So going back to what you said, Ann, I think that's the aspect of the road use agreement where it intertwines with the decommissioning plan and it intertwines with the letter of credit or bonding that we need to figure out how to put together and make it all part of the same thing and be covered for it, basically.
I didn't bring the road use agreement.
that road use
Right.
agreement.
Decommissioning is in the road use agreement, I am positive.
And I think we did find it in there before, but, and I don't doubt that. I think I'll echo what Mike said, he said it better than I was, just the concern about the financial instrument to back it up.
Right.
Oh, and you think the road use agreement doesn't say
Well-
about the instrument?
Yes, but this is just.
I don't know if it says something about bonding or not, but my assumption is that the bonding for the road use agreement would be gone after the installation of the turbines.
That's
That they
right.
wouldn't keep that bonding in place once the turbines are installed. They would fix the road, then they would cancel the bonding or the letter of credit
That's
and be
correct.
gone, because there's no reason for them to spend 25 years of letter of credit on the road use agreement when it's not really relevant. It would be much easier, and I think much more financially feasible, to just put a dollar number into the decommissioning plan that would cover the fixing the roads after the decommissioning is done. It might only be $20,000 or whatever, but you would have an extra number in there into the 180 times 7 that you would add into it for the repair of the roads once the turbines were gone.
How do we guarantee the financial
Cost.
Yeah, no, you're right, Mike, because that
Costs
makes it one instrument, not two
of-
instruments. Okay.
road of, the road part
Of the road repairs
road of,
after decommissioning.
during decommissioning?
Well, during and after, yeah. Specifically after, I think, though, because we'd want to wait until the decommissioning is done, and then we'd want to do the road repair.
Well, that's how you have to do it.
Right.
Or, I mean, you have to have an evaluation prior to decommissioning and an evaluation after
Sounds
decommissioning.
right, yeah.
The same as you do. How do we guarantee the financial costs of the wear and tear on our roads during decommissioning?
During the decommissioning process. And then cover ourselves in the bond or the letter of credit to pay for it.
Isn't that the financial cost?
Yeah, well, we want to know what the costs are, we want to guarantee it, but we want to figure out some way to, we just have to, I'm just being wordy is all, sorry.
Well, the number we've calculated is just, like 8 per turbine, take down 8 turbine,
Right.
or, multiply by 7, whatever that number is. But it doesn't include the other costs that would be incurred by the town after decommissioning in terms of road repair.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
If any.
something that we
Right.
should factor into the bonding or letter of credit, whatever it is.
But we can factor that in when we come to the letter of credit process. In fact, we might even be able to get a better financial sense of what those costs would be during the course of the installation project. So should the installation happen, we're going to know what the costs are to fix the road after the installation, because we're going to have a pre-install situation and we're going to have a post-install cost to fix it. So that would actually give us a better sense of what the cost would be, possibly during the decommissioning process as well, that we could write into whatever future agreement we made that took the place of the bond. Makes sense?
I think so. So we'll know more after it's been done.
We'll know more after it's been done.
It's been done once, so.
Okay, so you'll get a draft proposal around, and I'll rework this resolution with Michael's more current figures. we'll haul out the road use agreement again. And look at what it says about road use during decommissioning. Does that kind of cover the remaining concerns? Regarding the decommissioning?
Tune in next week.
Are we having a special meeting next week?
Tune in in 2 weeks.
Not that I'm aware
Oh,
of.
okay.
Are you still here next week?
I am not here next week,
And you're not here in 2 weeks?
but I am here in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
I'm
Where's the
sorry, I
plan?
can barely hear you with the air conditioners. I don't know if you can speak up or not, but I can just barely make up what you're saying.
I'll try to
I'm
speak up
sorry.
louder.
Thank you, sorry. Anybody else, or is it just hotter here?
It
Okay,
is.
maybe I'm getting old, I can't.
No, it's the air conditioners.
I'm scared.
We're all getting old.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and then next on the agenda is next steps in finalizing the environmental impact statement. I talked to Kathy Spencer, and I have talked to Marguerite a couple of weeks ago. Aldrich has not done any draft work yet. Mike is concerned about moving forward. I'm really feeling that it's in the project's lap, ballpark, whatever that euphemism is. I don't know if you want to speak to that, Marguerite, or...
They're working on it, it's just not done yet.
Well, a letter from Kathy Spencer. This was this afternoon. Ann and I spoke yesterday. She indicated in a later call between myself and Haley and Aldrich confirmed that the project sponsor has not authorized Haley and Aldrich to do any work on preparation of a draft, final, supplemental environmental impact statement. So at this time, no draft has been started.
That's right. Because we're just still working on the responses. It's not the larger document.
So Haley and Aldrich is doing the responses?
No, I am.
Okay, all right, that was, so, but, and I wrote Kathy back, I'm not sure why that impacts are not working on it. Why wouldn't we be working on it too? I mean, it's
Well-
not their responsibility to do this, it's our responsibility to do it.
Well, you know, I guess we can,
Well, let me ask the ladies from Echo. Don't you have the expectation that we would be getting this to you sooner rather than later, and being as timely as we could be?
I mean, the way that, as you know, the way that we had done it previously was that we had our consultants do it, you know, work up the responses and then the whole write-up. Because there's responses and there's a write-up too.
Right.
And previously we had had the Haley guys do that and then give it to Kathy and she would amend it in whatever way she saw fit and provide it to you guys. It had been my understanding that you guys were wanting to be more of a lead in this process than you had been previously. So I wasn't thinking that Haley was, which is why I hadn't hired them to do it. I didn't
Right.
think it was their job to be the lead. I sort of thought it was on Kathy, and I have been working on responses too.
Right.
It sort of felt like it was in my court.
Right.
But yeah, I'd welcome work on it from you guys as well. I mean, generally it's more work than anybody wants to take on, which is why they have all put on paid consultants.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why my concern is that if it's gonna take us 3 months, and we'd be better off starting sooner rather than later.
Which is kind of why I was getting at this solving the decommissioning thing, because as I see it, the supplemental EIS is the next big thing we need to sort of start chewing on.
Right.
And
Mhm.
as why I wanted to get at least one thing, put to bed so that we could start
Right.
the next.
Right, but this is kind of a big step in this whole process.
What, the whole SEIS thing?
Yeah.
It's huge. It's
Yes.
an enormous amount to do.
So, I mean, it's what's sitting there ready to do, so I'm not sure why.
Flyers at me in my inbox every day.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we wouldn't just go ahead and start doing it, is all. I mean, other than that, if all we are planning on doing is just responding to Marguerite's responses to the comments. But that seems, we certainly would want to respond to Marguerite's responses. We want to know how Black Oak feels about it and where they're going and what they think about this, that, and the other thing. But we'll have our own thoughts too, and there may be even things that she won't respond to because she doesn't feel like they fit in the vote. Everybody has their own way of looking at it. So, but at some point, we're going to have to go through all of these responses or farm it out to somebody and have them go through them all. And it's going to take time. It's going to take months to do this really well and
Right.
to talk about it amongst, if all five of us are going to get together to go through these things. It's 100 or it's 1,046 pages of comments.
Well, there's a lot more to it than the comments.
Yeah. So,
It's the environmental impact of
well,
changes.
it's reading the comments and dealing with them and then formulating some kind of an organization for them and then deciding which ones are relevant, which ones aren't, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of stuff to do, and I mean, it's our job, or we can give it to.
So it's only driven by the comments?
Is it driven by the comments?
No, only driven.
No, I don't think so. I think we are meant to have our own understanding of what the supplemental environmental impact statement says and take that into consideration when people comment on it. But we're not just supposed to think about, well, they only said this and they only said this and this, so that's all we're going to think about. They may make a comment about something that would make us go back and look at the EIS and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't think about that, but what about this? And then we may go into a conversation that leads off into an area that nobody commented at all on, and we would suddenly say, well, wait a minute, this is a big deal for us. Why don't we, we need to say something about this. My understanding is this final environmental impact statement is a statement to Black Oak Wind Farm that says, this is what we want from you. This is it. And then they look at it for a while, and then we codify it in the finding statement and saying, this is what it looks like, this is what the whole process looks like. But I think in order to get to the finding statement, we need to at least go through the comments and understand and validate the ones that we think are real and the ones that we think are valid, the ones that we think have merit behind them, the ones we think are just saying it's great, not great, whatever, There's a lot of categorizing that has to happen with all the different comments in terms of where they go.
Kathy was starting that process of sorting.
She hasn't done any of it. No, she hasn't done anything at all. And that's what she said in her letter.
I mean, for us to have some of those conversations, we kind of need them sorted through to begin talking about those topic areas, or whatever, however they're categorized.
Well, I guess we need to make it some kind of a plan in terms of how we're going to work with Kathy. Do we want to be working in two different places at the same time, both doing the same thing? That seems a little counterproductive. At least, if nothing else, we want to talk with her and make a decision on how we're going to organize our response to the comments. And say, well, we're going to do a first draft and give it to you, or you're going to do a first draft and give it to us, or we're going to deal with all the comments in this area, and you're going to deal with all the ones in that area.
So at this point, just overall scope, overall view of this, we have a supplemental draft EIS. We've got public comments on that. So is Kathy really waiting for Black Oak to comment on it before she assembles both the public comments and the developer comments on those comments.
That's what she said.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, having spoken to Kathy a couple of weeks ago, she called to make sure that she and I were on the same page, and we were.
Okay.
She didn't have any direction from the town board, or from me for that matter, but, you know, she doesn't work for me, but she didn't have any direction from you that it was her job to be compiling comments or doing anything, so she wasn't. She was waiting on me and Aldrich to do something, and I haven't hired Aldrich to do anything because I've been working on it myself. And I have assumed that you guys were doing something behind the scenes, but I haven't necessarily been expecting a work product from you in any formal way.
Well, I don't think we've even started to work on it at this point. We just
Right.
kind of left it hang. And
Right, because we've been working on other stuff anyway.
which is why I think at this point, we need to decide what we're gonna do, and if we're gonna do something as a board, we need to start doing it. Because it's time.
It sounds like we need to instruct Kathy and Labella to begin sorting through the comments.
Well, to do what though? What do we want her to do?
Well, we've got, I don't know, 500,000 pages.
There's 1,000 pages.
1,000
Yeah.
pages of comments that need to be sorted and categorized, grouped by topic areas, I would assume, so we can begin discussions on those areas. What else we want? Are we expecting them to pull out, do a first go through and relevant areas of concern?
Well, I think that's what we need to decide, is what are we expecting of them? That
And by
would be the
topic
choice.
areas, you're talking about what is in the draft final. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
or
talking about,
or
topic
or
areas?
Any topic area that was brought up in the public comment area, whether it's related.
Well,
to
that may be entirely
It
different.
may be something talking about water resources, or maybe talking about setbacks, or talking about anything, whatever those comments are, they're gonna, you know, you're gonna be sorting through them and saying, okay, there's that pile that's talking about this thing, and there's that pile that's talking about that thing. And they don't necessarily have to match exactly to the, you know, exact categories in the draft supplemental EIS. It's just whatever the natural categories that you're sorting through them, like.
The
these are topic areas that
SEIS
we'll
has
talk
all the
about.
categories that all the other ones have. I mean, it has all the same categories and all the same issues,
Yeah.
just in a different context is all.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm sure a lot of those categories will match pretty closely to some of those topic areas.
They'll match a lot of the comments that people make, definitely, yeah. Yeah. So where do we go from here? Anybody have any?
So how many topic areas do you think are in the draft?
Well, it depends on how far down you want to detail the differences, but I think there are certainly as many topic areas as there are topic areas in the SEIS, which is 17, 15, 17, somewhere in that range. I think there certainly are that many,
15, 17 topic areas.
yeah, which is what there are in the SEIS itself. And then there are a number of comments, basically, that just say, go for it, I hate it, whatever, you know, that don't really reference any specific topic areas. Those tend to be short, so there's not that much going on. There are a number of comments that reference a specific topic area, and they may have 2 pages on it, but then they also may have 50 pages of referenced information that came from another source that's an addendum onto that letter that the person made with the comment, that they are hoping that we will pursue and understand the relevance of the information. I mean, it seems like if they went to the trouble of putting that all together and sending that in, that it's our responsibility to at least address that information that got given to us and got sent to us as part of the process.
Okay, here's
17 topic areas.
here's a question. We hire Labella because, you know, that's what they do.
Right.
And
They have expertise
and they have
in
expertise
this
in this
process.
area. We're not experts in this area. That's why we hired someone to help us with this.
Right.
And so I feel like, well, if they've done this before, then they should also be indicating, you know, some of the process to us. So this is what we do in this case. This is what we do in that case. So it's like them waiting for us to. I'm not sure what they're asking for us, because it seems like they should be telling us, like, well, this is the next step we need to do in this
Right.
process.
Let me give you a for instance then, okay? The Bella is given information on noise, on sound, turbine sound, right? There's probably at least 50 comments in the comment file on sound issues. Some of them have long things that go along with them, long printed out things, research things from the internet or wherever they are that go along with them. So they give you lots of information. I think from what I can tell so far, most of that information is coming up with issues that are concerning people in relation to sound. There's some information that is the opposite, that says these studies say that sound is no issue, there's no problem here, So Labella gets 20 comments over here with backup information that says sound is a real issue. They get 10 comments over here that says sound is not a real issue. What are they supposed to do with that? What do we want them to do with it?
Well, don't you think there's standards of well, not behavior, but standards of evaluation of technical information
Of course there are. Yeah.
that they have to adhere to?
Of course there are, but you can do a study just like you can do a survey that is formatted in such a way that you prove this, and you can do another study over here formatted in such a way that you prove just the opposite of that. Just how they do a survey, it depends on how you ask the question. Do you want Donald Trump, the greatest man that America ever made, to be our next president? That's one way to put it, and chances are you'll get more positive responses to that than you say, you want that old Trump guy to be the president? Sorry, I don't mean to be, but I can't avoid Trump these days, but it depends on how you put it, and it depends on how the studies are done. There's a lot of people out there that make money off of bringing in studies that prove a point to the person who's funding the study to them. And the people that fund studies know who those people are and say, just go get that guy to fund your study. He'll come up with just the answer that you want. And the other side will say, go get this guy. He'll come up with the answer that you want. And they will.
Don't you think the engineers that do these evaluations for a business have some idea about that?
I think they have some idea. I don't think they're going to be very good at it.
No?
Because from what I've seen so far, from the responses that they've given us, I'm not really impressed with the responses that they've given us in other situations. And I'm even less impressed with the fact that they did give us responses that made it very clear that there were issues and concerns that we should have been concerned about, and we completely ignored them. We read the stuff that they said, this is a real problem, and we said, no problem, let's just vote it in. We're not doing this well, and I don't think Labella is doing it any better than us. I'm saying right now, let's try and do a good job of this thing. And I think we have to have our feet in the wine vat in here with Labella and say, let's make grapes out of this whole thing, make mush, and find out what's really going on. Find out what the real thing is, because I don't think it's true that the noise, that the sound levels from turbines have no effect on people at all. And I don't think it's true that the sound levels from turbines are completely awful and are going to make everybody that's in the neighborhood sick. I don't think either one of those is true. I think there is a truth somewhere in there. I think there's a capability of these sound levels to affect some people in certain ways that may be damaging to them. But it's very tricky stuff. It's complicated stuff, and it's stuff that nobody's really studied to any great degree. It hasn't been going on for a long time. Nobody's getting paid to make really good studies that says, okay, why are you getting sick from this turbine? There's not a lot of money out there to fund that, because there's no value in it. There's nobody that wants to get the answer, yes, there's a problem with turbines and sound, because it doesn't help anybody. All it helps is the little guy on the farm, and he isn't funding those studies. I don't think that Labella understands the depth of research and understanding that we want in this process, that I want in this process, to know what's really going on with the wind farms, what the possibilities are, what we can do about it. I would really love to have this project happen. My global self says, great things, let's do it. my town board member in Enfield says, no way, we're gonna damage all these people out here and damage their lives and make them move from their houses. So I'm really stuck in the middle of this whole thing, and I don't wanna be in the middle. I wanna find a way out. And the only way I know of the way out is to say, okay, let's look at what's really going on as much as we can. And if we find that there's real things, real problems here, let's find a solution to those real problems and figure out a way for Black Oak to go ahead and do their thing, because I think we would all like it to happen if we know that it's not gonna harm the people that live there. It's not easy though. It's a really
But
complicated thing.
you would be agreeable to that process you just,
The process of figuring it out.
yes.
Definitely, yeah. What else is there? That's what our job is. That's why we're here.
But, Labella, I mean, it's an engineering firm, and at some point, public comments are gonna include both passion and facts, and we
Right.
need to depend on them to sort through saying, well, this comment, okay, that there are some factual concerns that we should be having that, and that's kind of what we're looking for them to say, is to sort out some of these things, saying, yeah, that this comment is just, is like, isn't relevant, but this comment, is a concern, and you should, not, you hire them because they're not pro or against, they're just, an engineering firm that needs to evaluate things at a technical level and provide feedback to us to help us.
Yeah. First of all, they are an engineering firm. They do have more education than we do. My experience with engineers is that engineers are only as good as they are. Some of them are great, some of them are awful. And some of them I know a whole lot more about engineering than they do, and some of them they know a whole lot more about building than I do, even though I'm a builder. I don't want to trust that we're just going to give this over to somebody and say, you do it. At the same time, you're right, I don't think it's really just up to us to say, well, we'll figure it all out and be the final arbiter or something. But if we're going to give it to Labella to do, we need to have a very clear statement to Labella that says exactly what it is we want them to do and what kind of a product we want them to come up with that we can then take, or that we can work with in the process with them, that we can do something with that's going to give us what we really need in the end.
And kind of what I was expecting them to be doing was to sort them out by topic areas, and then also going through them and evaluating them, saying, well, there are some legitimate, concerns, that's someone brought up. It doesn't mean that, this is wrong, this is right, or this is whatever. It's just saying, just to begin that first go around of evaluating some of them, sorting through the comments and evaluating them on their own merit.
Right.
Technical merit.
Right. So
we can't do that ourselves.
well, we can certainly do it.
We can, but it'll be about 5 years.
What if we each cite our top 5 concerns, write them down with a proposed solution for each one, and then compare? That'd be at least a place to
I think that's fine, but I
start.
think that actually belongs more in the finding statement than it does in the final supplemental EIS, because we're not talking about what we think yet. We're looking at what other people think, trying to get a good understanding of what they think about this whole thing, and then put some kind of a format on it that says, okay, we hear this, we hear this, we hear this. This is how we have taken in and made best sense of what you're saying to us. That's kind of the final environmental impact statement. The finding statement after that says, with that in mind, with what we just read about and with what we understand and what we know about it and all this information that's been given to us, as well as information that we found out on our own doing this and that, this is what we individually feel Black Oak has to do in order for us to allow them to have a permit to build this project. That's the finding statement, basically. So I think that's where that sits. Maybe I'm wrong.
So what do you think, as lead agency, we should do as board members next step?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is talk to Kathy Spencer, at the very least. And I'm almost flabbergasted that she went this long without saying a word to anybody about the fact that she's not doing anything at all in this project.
Well, she
But
was on
maybe-
vacation for 2 weeks.
And it's been 4 months now. It's been a long time since we got this thing back. I just, and maybe it's our fault as a board. Maybe they were just sitting there saying, well, we haven't heard from Enfield, so we're we're not doing anything because Enfield has to tell us to start. Same with the auditors. Enfield has to say, do this, and then we'll do it. And maybe we just didn't say do it, so. But I'm just saying right now, we either have to say do it, or we have to do it ourselves, or better yet, ask them to help us do it and give them enough direction, enough information about what we're looking for, that they can do it in a way that's going to be most beneficial for us and the most useful for us when we want to put our understanding of it onto it and make something out of it that has a real picture of what the board thinks, not what the Bella thinks. Because
When
we
you
don't
say
want,
do it ourselves, what do you mean specifically?
I mean, sit down every week, night, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, whatever nights, once a week, and sit here for 3 hours together and go over the comments one by one by one by one, format them into a place where they belong, and say, okay, here's all the comments on this, and here's the ones on this, and let's read through them, make decisions. This is exactly what Frank Pavia told us that we would be and should be doing in order to do this. He said that's what you're going to do. You're going to get together in a meeting, and you're going to have votes, and you're going to say, that's dumb, this is smart, this is great, this is awful, whatever it might be, you know. But if we want to be part of the process and have input in the process, we have to decide where we're going to do that input. And I think if we don't at least give Labella some sense of what we're looking for and how we're trying to do this input, that they're not as likely to format this information in a way that we'll be able to take it from them if we decide to have them do it and make sense out of it the way we want to. We could ask them to just take a secretary and organize it all and say, okay, all the category 1 stuff here, all the category 2 stuff here. I mean, that would be great, that would be helpful.
So you think we should all be together rather
We have
than
to
look
be.
at it?
We can't do it individually. We're not allowed to do it individually. We have to do it at a board meeting. This is my understanding, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, just to look at it individually first, then come to the meeting and say, this is
But we
what
can do
is
that,
important to
yeah.
me, but
Yeah, we
just
can
to save
definitely
some
do that,
time.
yeah. Yeah, and that would be something we would want to do, I would think, would be for us to, I mean, we have access there, it's all online. I have 2 copies if anybody wants a copy of it. Happy to give you a copy. I'm reading through the first one, the second one's free.
2 copies of...
Of the comments that were made, so. But at the same time, we also need to talk about the process that we're going to do to get together and talk about these things, if that's what we're going to do. And I can't do it by myself. I can't make a response to these people because it's really all of us decision to do that.
I think we need to narrow it down to certain key...
To what?
We need to narrow it down to certain categories, certain concerns, I think. Instead of saying, well, we've got 1,000 pages, then we can say, well, we've got 15 main concerns.
We could do that. That would be a start. Certainly, that seemed like a good place to start. Yeah. Then where do we go?
Give that to Labella? I don't know. What we do after that.
Well, that's my question: is where do we want to go from there?
Well,
We're the
what you
board.
just said, is the way I heard it, first of all, there was one thing before. There are 17 topic areas.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to agree with that. From what I hear you say, we need to take every single comment that came in and categorize it under one of those topic areas.
We could. It would probably give you a better product when it's all done. If we're going to put out this final supplemental EIS and we don't have some kind of organizational structure for it, it will be more difficult for other people to read. Have you read the comments on the final EIS yet?
No.
At the end of the final EIS, there's this many pages, whatever.
You're talking about the approval of the last
The final environmental impact statement.
June.
Right. If you
Yes,
look
I
at
read
the
that.
comments on that, at the end of the final thing, there's comments.
Yes.
And Labella has a long thing of,
Yes.
I responded this, so forth and so on.
Yes.
And then there's answers to everybody else's comments, and there's nowhere near as many comments on that
That's
as there are
right.
on this one, right?
That's right.
But all in the back section, each of those comments is written out, each of those public comments is written out, and then a response to them is written out afterwards. And the response basically comes from Labella because we didn't do it as a board at that point.
Right.
We just left that to Labella to do
Right.
it basically. So that's the same thing that needs to happen now, is that each one of those comments has to have a response to it. And you would think that with so many comments, you'd want to have some kind of organizational structure to have that you can actually make some sense out of it. A lot of the comments that are non-informative but relevant to a section, you could put at the start of the section. If the things having to do with noise, you could have a comment that says, nothing to worry about for noise, no big deal, Joe Blow. Another comment that says, noise is a real issue, Mary Jane. And those could all be at the start of the comment section, and you could just say, heard, understood. And I think Marguerite had a lot of comments that just basically said, thanks for your comment, appreciate it, and we're going to go from here. When she responded to some of the comments on the final EIS, basically. But
Now you're talking about last time.
I'm talking about last time because it's an example of what we would want to be doing or need to be doing this time. I think it's the same thing. Again, it's a lot of comments that we are expected to have a response to by the people that made the comments.
Well, we don't want to reply to each and every comment, since a lot of them will probably be saying about the same thing, right? Shouldn't we?
Some of them do say the same things, definitely, yeah.
And the way that was addressed last year, in the other one, is when you group them, you know, let's say a bunch about, let's say there's one comment about noise that has the most amount of detail, let's say. And then there are another bunch of comments saying similar things but with lesser detail. What you do is you address the most detailed, extensive comment with the most extensive response. And then for all the other comments that are on the same subject, you say, refer to comment 32. Because it all goes back to something you already wrote. So you don't have to write the same thing every time. You just, once you've categorized it, you address it. And some of them, like Mike said, don't require a response. If they just say something like, you know, I hate turbines, make them go away, you say, okay, thank you for your comment.
But
you
it
don't need
does,
to respond substantively to that because it's not anything bigger than that.
So,
but it does benefit from some kind of an organizational structure in the comment section, so somebody can make some sense out of it.
well, that's later on. So, taking last year's format,
Right.
you feel that we need to do the same format this year?
I think that's.
You think that's the state?
I don't know if it's the only state way, but it's very much in keeping with what the state is expecting us to do in the process. Am I right? Yeah. I think that's what people are looking for. And I think beyond that, even if the state didn't want it, the town of Enfield people took a lot of effort to do this. I think they at least deserve to see their comment on there and say, thanks for the comment, you know, if nothing else.
Every comment needs to be listed in the...
I think we should, personally. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way, but I think if somebody bothered to spend the time making a comment, you can just say, if there's nothing on it but just great stuff, keep going, then just say thanks, that's all. But otherwise, if you wind up printing this thing and you take comments that say great stuff, keep going, or awful project, don't ever do it, and you say, these are really irrelevant, they don't really mean anything, let's leave them off. Joe Blow and Mary Jane are going to come and say, my comments weren't listed in that thing. What other comments did you drop because you thought they were inappropriate or because you didn't like the politics of my statement? And they're right in being able to think that way, because they don't really know the process. The process that we're doing right now isn't an open-ended process. You know, we give it to Labella. Labella goes through this thing and says, okay, we'll do this, do this, this. And Labella has 20 things at the end and says, these are irrelevant, put them away. They don't know that the people in town who made those comments don't know that Labella just said, these don't really say anything, we're just going to not bother with them.
Well,
All they know is...
There any comments that I saw that aren't responded to. I mean,
I think they all were, yeah.
They were
Well,
all
I was going to ask
responded
that question. You
Yeah.
think that they left some out?
No, I think they didn't, and that's
Oh.
what I'm saying again, is I don't think we should. I think we actually should make a response to every comment, even if it's just thanks, even if it's just a simple, we heard you, you know?
It's
and that's all.
respectful and appropriate.
Right.
I'm still struggling with going back to something we talked about at the beginning, is actually having a conversation with Kathy, because we haven't talked to her and we're just, putting down a process without knowing, we're kind of relying on them to help us with this, and they might have some thoughts on the best way
I'm sure they
to
do.
approach that. And I think it would be helpful to have a conversation so we can, because maybe they take your idea and say, yeah, that's good, but this is kind of, we have a way, we do it similar to the way you do it,
Right.
but I think there needs to be a two-way conversation.
There's
instead
no
of-
question that that would benefit all of us to do that.
And then, because we kind of, the end of the public commentary period was like 3.5 months ago.
Right.
And we haven't made any progress on that.
We haven't started the process yet, you
And
know.
I guess we were waiting on Bella thinking that they needed to.
Well, we were kind of waiting on Black Oak, thinking that they were first in line. And I didn't really realize until a couple weeks ago that really they're not first in line. Their business is their business, but our business is to do this paper. And if we're waiting on them, that we're wrong to do that. We are the lead agency. We should be leading.
And there was this communication disconnect because, they're waiting, Kathy's waiting on us to give us
Exactly.
feedback, and
Yeah.
we're kind of waiting on them, and
Yeah.
maybe we should just have,
We're all-
just a short conversation
Right.
on this, and
Right.
just to make sure that we're all, coming to some agreement on the best way forward.
Right.
Well, I think I heard the statement from somebody at the table that Frank Pavia outlined the methodology we should be using.
He did at a meeting. I don't know if you were in the meeting when we met in Alan's office.
Yeah, everybody was.
But there's
That's where he told the methodology.
That's where he said part of the process. He didn't
Part of the
describe the whole
process.
methodology, but he said part of the process, typically, with other town boards, is that they look at the information and decide what they think as a board is relevant or not relevant, true, not true, whatever it might be. And that's how their responses get generated, by basically an up and down vote of the board saying, we don't think this is relevant, we think it's relevant, or we think there's something here we need to talk about, but it's not all true. There's a lot of talking to do there. It's a complicated process, and there's a lot of complicated comments that people made that they're going to take some time to think about. If we're really going to pay attention and do it right, we're going to have to look at it and think about it and talk about it with each other to do it.
So it sounds like we want to we want to have a comment, even if it's like, thank you for your comment on each one, but begin building a list of concerns that represent the body of the comments. In other words, it could be 15, it could be, 36, key, areas, could be, 5, I don't know. Key areas of concern that really represent the body of the comments that
I think what you said in terms of Kathy being here and discussing this with us, I think we would be miles ahead to talk with her and to develop a process between the Bella and ourselves that we will use to make this happen.
Yeah, let's meet with her. 'Cause I want to find out if we should really spend our time addressing every individual comment or just make sure that all the topics are covered. So,
That's why, one of the reasons why it would be good to talk to her.
I mean, if I was concerned about the wind farm lived up there and I addressed the topic, I wouldn't really care if I saw my comment quoted and answered individually, but I would like to see the topic I brought up
And answered.
addressed.
But
And
I
that
think she has a lot to give us, but I think at the same time, we have a lot that we could give her in terms of information and what we're interested in actually producing and how we want to produce it and how we want to interface with Labella to make this happen. And I
Yeah,
think,
we need to meet with her.
yeah, I think that hasn't happened yet.
could that be scheduled for like the next meeting, town meeting, or is that a special meeting?
If you want it at the next regular board meeting, I'll be happy to arrange it, but I do not think it will be, the monthly meeting is too much as it is, and I don't think it'll be productive. I
Right.
think we have to do it as a special meeting. I think so too.
Probably,
Uh,
yeah.
like this one.
Well, anytime you can arrange it, I'm happy to come. I do think at next month's meeting, however, that we're gonna have to put an extension
Yeah, fine. That's like simple.
process again, yeah. I just don't want us to
And
get
I
stuck.
don't believe that, I know that there is no limit to the extensions one can have. One has to be moving along.
Right, they do ask for valid reasons to do that. And they do ask us to keep Black Oak in the loop as far as our timing on it. And so, just to keep you in the loop, right now, September 15th is our drop dead date. It sounds like we're gonna have to extend that further along. And we'll just, maybe after talking with Kathy, we can find out how far along we have to extend it and just make it as short a time period as possible. Do you have any sense at all of when you're likely to be ready with whatever information you want to give to the developer?
I can have it certainly more organized and compiled in a couple of weeks.
So let's try and meet with Kathy within a few weeks then, and then we'll talk to her and see what time she needs, and then we'll kind of go from there and figure out how much extra time we want to put on to make it happen.
I did want to bring your attention, the state comptroller has set the tax levy limit. You all have a copy of his weekly reader.
0.76 for the
No, 0.68.
68.
So in generalities, I would say that this, for the town of Enfield, is a zero to stay under this tax levy. It is a zero increase budget.
Which may mean if some of the things that we don't have any control over do go up, we may actually have to.
Then you would have, that would be, yes,
We may
you
have to
would
go
have
down
some
with some other
wiggle.
things, right?
No raises,
Okay.
no improvements. No new purchases.
So when the budget went up last year by, in other words, 30% on our tax bills, is that the point where it just needs the baseline to cover all our bills as a budget might have it?
No, it was a one-year thing. It was a one-year fluke.
So is it reasonable to expect that it would probably go down this budget year because it went up?
I don't have control over what some department heads put in.
I think one of the issues, Michael, is that 80% of our budget last year was a highway.
Yeah.
And can be a really difficult thing to be able to control because it has to do partly with the weather, it has to do partly with equipment and how well it lasts and how well it doesn't last and things like that, and partly with damage to roads and how well the roads hold up and how well they don't. So we really need to get a better plan for how we're going to budget highway department money in the future in terms of equipment rentals and leases and how we're going to replace equipment that needs to be replaced. We need to have an overall plan of how we're going to maintain the roads and bridges and culverts so that we know how much we can spend each year in keeping with the budget and what projects we can do, what project is next up on the priority list and say, okay, now we're going to save money toward that one, we're going to put away $30,000 $20,000 every year out of our normal budget to cover this culvert until it's done, and then 5 years from now, when we have enough to fix that culvert, we'll do that, and then we'll still go to the next priority.
But see, that's the way you do it, but we don't have an inventory.
We don't have a lot of stuff that we need to make that happen well.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, you put in enough money into a equipment fund or whatever funds they need. And you can pull for that on the years you could buy like a really expensive piece of equipment.
But it's never been done here.
It's never, so we don't have any such fund to pull from. So it's
There is
gonna-
some.
There's some.
There's not a lot.
So,
But it hasn't been done in a methodical way.
So we don't have any of that built up to purchase a large piece of equipment.
Not enough, like if an excavator goes out for $200,000,
Yeah, that's,
and the highway department budget is $800,000, that's a quarter of the budget for the year. You're not going to be able to pull that out of it and say, where can we, how can we do that?
so until we build up a fund that can mitigate some of those expensive, high expense years and low expense years and keep it fairly even, it's gonna go up and it's gonna go down fairly dramatically.
Unless we
potentially.
do what some of the other towns have done, Danby in specific, and actually go to a leasing program for all the equipment. That's one thing that Buddy's been talking about that he thinks is a better way to do it. And I think he's right. I think leasing is probably in the end going to be a better way, at least to control our budget. They have some sense of how to do that.
Now with the leasing, would that include, would cover like the maintenance and?
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, he's got a piece of equipment right now that's in for free maintenance because it was leased and it was still under the lease plan.
That will allow us to give a better sense, because those equipment are that expensive to replace those.
You're right. It is. And we have some new equipment, but we've got some stuff that's getting pretty old too. So it really needs a plan, a longer term plan.
And that way we can better budget, so we don't have those like high expense years.
There will be little latitude this year. Little latitude. Just sort of bringing the subject up.
And we may have to do without some things, and we may actually have to decide that certain levels of, not luxury, but certain levels of
Well,
maintenance.
there will be no raises.
Yeah. But even certain levels of maintenance may have to be foregone to
Right,
some degree.
and no talk of salt storage building.
So, well, unless we budget it into the process over the next few years.
Now with a zero increase budget, you can't.
Well, we could if we wind up using CHIPS money for it, and we do that instead.
Strategy.
Yeah,
Well,
so that's,
you have to have buy-in for that strategy.
But there could be other, spikes in costs that the town has incurred that aren't just equipment. It could be, it could just be a really bad winter. We don't have control over that.
or it could be a really good winter, which we got last winter, which would mean we should have some surplus in the highway department budget this year. left
You be
over.
watching for that.
So,
You be watching for that.
for that surplus to suddenly emerge,
You be watching.
Buddy
for that.
coming in and throwing dollar bills around. Here's your money back. Be fun though, wouldn't it?
I will be looking for it. I will be looking for it.
I think it's actually a conversation that needs to happen between the board and the highway department, both invested in it, because we're both invested in the process to make it work, so I think we need to do that.
And we will end with the privilege of the floor. Does anybody wish to speak at privilege of the floor? Dawn.
Joyce, 105 Griffin Road. I would like to ask the board, why is the railroad use agreement, decommissioning of the turbines, talks about bonds being discussed, and certain issues being passed? I said it once before, Black Oak Wind Farm, you and the town board and all of us Enfield residents have no clue the specific location of these 7 turbines, nor where the substation will be conducted. Myself, along with several Enfield residents, want to know simply, why is it not being addressed or answered? Why are we talking about bonds when there's 7 turbines, when everyone has no clue what is going on? Not only that, I used to have hawks, I used to have sparrowhawks, and I used to have kestrels. I have 0 birds that say clear cut on black okra. It has made a major impact on the birds. I would like to talk with the Cornell ornithologist that does studies up there. We have thousands of chipmunks now. It's ridiculous. They're taking over. I have no hawks anywhere. So I know since they cut that, since last year, I have not seen a single hawk. It's making a huge impact on birds already.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at privilege of the floor? Marcus.
Marcus Gingrich, 101 Rumsey Hill Road. Yeah, I just got a couple of comments, kind of questions for you to consider. It's been brought up about the whole road use agreement and combined with decommissioning. One of the things I've not really heard, and maybe it's in there, maybe I don't know that well. What if there's a catastrophic failure of a turbine? I mean, it happens. They get knocked over by a storm or something like that. Now you've got the wind farm replacing it, taking out the old one or whatever, decommissioning that one, replacing it. Where does that come into the process? Is that covered by the road use agreement? If it's 10, 15 years down the road, is there a bond that needs to be in place for that? Just kind of another scenario that does happen. What if a blade falls off and they have to haul in a new blade? Now you've got pretty heavy equipment coming in again to install it.
Is it okay if I respond to that? Yeah.
Sure.
We did talk about that a little bit, I think at the last meeting, Marcus. I don't know if you stayed holding it.
No,
but I think we want to have that be part of the decommissioning plan so that we understand that there may be things that happen along the way so that it covers from start to finish, basically. And I think we're just going to be looking for that in language when we get closer to the actual language that we're going to use on it, to try and have that be a part of it as well.
Okay, very good. I apologize if I wasn't here. I didn't.
Well, no,
last time.
we didn't talk about it much. I think it just got brought up as an aside somewhere.
And kind of, you take that one step further. Bottom line is, I hear some questions about, okay, is this in there? I think this is covered by this. This is covered. It's not in black and white. It's not in there.
Right.
That's the way you need to look at it. If it's not there in black and white, spelled out plainly and clearly, I don't think we can consider it.
Right.
Another question that I noticed came up was about the engineers of Labella handling this and being familiar with this process and working on it. And I guess my question for you, or maybe you want to ask them, how many EISs have they actually handled for wind farm? Is this a problem that they're actually familiar with?
I'll have Kathy give you her credentials.
Well, no, and I don't know. Maybe that is something that they do a lot of, but it's something to consider. But,
You think they don't do a lot?
well, how many wind farms are right around this area?
You're not a global thinker. They don't limit their business to central New York.
No, I realize that, but so you're saying that Kathy Spencer actually works in other states across the country, etc. Okay. That was just a question I had, and that's the answer. That's great. That's all I had. Thanks for your
Other
work on it.
engineers in Rochester work in other states on windmills. I'll get you the numbers.
I just want
Which
to
was one of the reasons that the former board chose Labella, is because of their credentials in doing environmental impact statements regarding windmills. They did not come unvetted by a previous board. Apparently, another privilege of the floor comment.
I just wanted to say, can you imagine the drought we've had this year and one of them things catching on fire, falling over? You can say goodbye to your town. Is it worth it?
Thank you.
Because it's dry, and you can hear the ground crunching.
Other privilege of the floor? I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
We'll do that. I'll get back to you on a special meeting with Kathy.
Thank you.